Thank you for joining us for this recorded web seminar from the U.S. National Archives and Records Administration's National Records Management Training Program. In this briefing, first presented in September 2012, Lynn Stewart of the Permanent Records Capture Team within NARA's Office of the Chief Records Officer covers information agency records managers need to know about the use of the Electronic Records Archives, or ERA, and the yearly transfer of eligible permanent records from agencies into the National Archives. Let's join the seminar.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Good afternoon or good morning, as the case may be, and it's delightful to see so many folks from all across the country joining us today. I do want to reiterate what Paulette just said about the content of this particular briefing. If your agency stores records in the Federal Records Centers, this session will be pertinent to you. If your agency does not store records in the Federal Records Centers, or if your agency only stores temporary and not permanent records in the FRCs, it will be less pertinent. If that is the case, if you don't normally store records in the FRCs, you might find the very first portion of this briefing, which covers ERA transfer basics, useful to you, but by and large, the session is oriented to agencies that do store records at the FRCs. Thousands of records move each year from Federal Records Centers to archival units of the National Archives. Often, every year, this includes tens of thousands of cubic feet. In the past, NARA has prepared and distributed hundreds of paper Standard Forms 258, the agreement to transfer records to the National Archives of the United States, and distributed them to the federal agencies. This process was not consistent across all NARA units and regions, and neither were agency processes across the country always consistent. Now, ERA transfer requests will completely replace the SF-258. NARA Bulletin 2012-03, which was distributed on the 28th of August, outlines NARA and agency use of ERA and provides other pertinent information for federal agencies. If you have not yet seen that, I encourage you to check that out on archives.gov or check with your agency records officer. Some processes and deadlines around the permanent records move will be affected by the transition to ERA. In some cases, new processes are required. In other cases, basic processes will remain the same. In this session, we'll present an overview of what's new, what's modified, what stays the same, and upcoming briefings and training. I'd like to start out by doing a quick review of ERA transfer basics, followed by information on using ERA for the annual move, the 2013 timeline, and talk about support for this transition to ERA. We'll have time for questions at the end, and you may also type your questions into chat at the lower left-hand portion of your screen. You've already had an opportunity to use chat with Paulette, so I hope you're all familiar with that a little bit now at this point. Before we start, though, I'd like to acknowledge some of our agency pioneers and power users. All of these agencies have already used ERA to transfer records to NARA and have assisted with feedback and suggestions. They have been tremendously supportive and tremendously helpful. I want to just say one more time, thank you. Where are we now with ERA? The development phase officially ended on September the 30th, 2011, with the end of the Lockheed Martin contract. And a new contract with IBM for operations began in February 2012. The new phase allows for corrective and adaptive maintenance. We will continue to seek your feedback as we move forward to full agency implementation of ERA. So here's an opportunity for us to use the feedback tool again. In this case, let me see, I would like to use the ABC option on your feedback. If your feedback isn't open, you can indeed click on the feedback bar and open up that section. If you would, and folks are already answering, if you would respond by clicking A if you are trained in ERA and have already used ERA to transfer records. If you would click B if you're trained but you've never had an opportunity to use ERA to transfer records up to this point. Or C, you aren't trained but you do indeed anticipate using ERA for the 2013 move. Let's see what we're getting here. Lots of good answers. Very good. Give folks another minute to respond. Okie doke. A couple of folks already have had an opportunity to use ERA. A number of people are trained and ready to start using it. Even more people do think they're going to be using it for the 2013 move or not yet. And not yet trained. Giving you some overall feedback about where you stand with other agencies overall. As of about the middle of June of this year, of the approximately 266 agencies identified by NARA's user adoption team, about 108 agencies, about 40% of those agencies had already did already have active users of ERA. 23% of those agencies have actually already done work in ERA. This would include both transferring records and record scheduling. At that time, 35% of the agencies were trained but had not yet had an opportunity to do work or did not have active accounts, and 24% of that number were neither trained nor active. Again, this is mid-June. I think the numbers have gone up then. Here's a quick reminder about ERA roles. ERA users must have ERA accounts that are based on roles. Each role allows the user to take certain actions or view certain forms, called business objects, in ERA. Agency account managers decide what agency staff are allowed accounts and which roles they will have. Generally, the agency account manager is the agency's senior records officer or someone designated to be the account manager by the records officer. There are two agency roles that are extremely important for non-electronic records transfers: the transferring agency official and the agency approving official. Internally in NARA, NARA also has account managers that do the same thing. In other words, they maintain, monitor users and user accounts and user roles internally for NARA staff, for NARA roles. There is an additional agency ERA role for transferring records called electronic transfer staff. This is only used for transferring electronic records by electronic means. So this role is not applicable for the annual permanent move from the Federal Record Centers. One individual may have multiple roles, and many individuals may be assigned to the same role. For instance, a senior records officer from the agency may choose to have their program records managers assigned to the transferring agency official role. So multiple people in that agency might have that role. And the records officer might take the agency approving official role for the official submission of the electronic form, the transfer request to NARA. Oops, I'm getting ahead of myself. As you already know, after September the 30th, 2012, agencies must use ERRA for the legal transfer of records to NARA. And this includes not just electronic records, but records in any media. This includes paper, special media, microforms, any kind of record in any media. We are working on changes to the Code of Federal Regulations, and as I've already mentioned, NARA Bulletin 2012-03 stipulates federal agency and NARA use of ERRA as the standard way to create and submit record schedules and to transfer permanent records to NARA. So replaced by ERRA are the SF-115, Request for Records Disposition Authority, and the SF-258, Agreement to Transfer Records to the National Archives of the United States. So how does this work? How does legal transfer work in ERRA? Each group of records that need to be transferred must be documented on an electronic form in ERRA called a transfer request, or a TR for short. The first level of agency approval is done by the transferring agency official, who submits the transfer request to the agency approving official. These are two levels of approval within the agency. Agency approving official, in turn, submits the transfer request, proposes the records to NARA for legal transfer. Again, to reiterate what I was saying earlier, an agency program manager, program records manager, or a regional records manager might be the transferring agency official and recommend that the transfer go to NARA by submitting the transfer request to the agency approving official, which, again, is often the agency records officer. That person, in turn, makes the official submission called proposal of the electronic form to NARA. So this gives us another opportunity to play with our feedback form. This time, let's try a yes-no form. If you know what role or roles you might have in ERRA, let us know. This is an open-ended question. Do you know, do you have a pretty good idea what role you will be playing in ERRA? Transferring agency official, agency approved official. A lot of answers coming in. Excellent. Looks like a lot of you do indeed have a pretty good idea or know for sure. You may already have your account and your roles set up, which roles you will be playing. Good. More answers still coming in. More than half of you who've responded already know what roles you're going to have. Excellent. Okay. A little more information. Basic transfer stuff. Keep in mind that each transfer request, again, we call them TRs for short, must be linked to a record schedule item or a legacy record schedule item. In other words, a disposition authority. Record schedules that are born and approved in ERRA are already available in the system, obviously. For existing valid SF-115s, this information must be entered into a form, a business object in ERRA called a legacy record schedule. Excuse me. It must be entered, and then it must be approved by the appropriate NARA staff. For the legacy record schedules that are needed for the 2013 move, NARA has already entered the appropriate legacy schedule items into ERRA. Those record schedules, the legacy record schedules, already exist in ERRA to be used for the 2013 move. For direct offers of permanent records, If the appropriate legacy record schedule item is not already available in ERA, the agency may send a request that it be added to NARA, and the address for that is quite simply legacy.schedule@nara.gov. And I think that Robin can probably, there we go, Robin has already put that in your chat. So you would send a request for a specific legacy schedule, a 115 item or a whole 115 to be added into ERA if you're planning to do a direct offer to the National Archives of Permanent Records to that particular mailbox, and NARA will enter that information as soon as possible. Then what happens? What happens next? Once an agency has proposed, submitted a transfer request to a NARA archival unit, the archival unit may either approve the records for transfer or reject is the button that we have to use in ERA, return the transfer request to the agency with a rejection comment to the agency. Sometimes this is necessary in order to return the transfer request to a draft state so that possible incorrect information can be corrected, and it also may be an opportunity for an archival unit to ask specific questions. They may need more information. So both of those are possible. The transfer request works this way in terms of submission internally, internal approvals at the agency, submission to NARA by the agency approving official, and the archival unit's response, which would either be to return or reject the transfer request or approve it. And it works this way for records that are stored in record centers as part of the permanent move that we do annually, actually pretty much all the year long, as well as direct offers that are coming directly from agency or agency storage. Do we have any chat items we need to deal with just at the moment? Or it looks like, I think folks are doing okay there. All right, good. Now that we've talked about some of the basic transfer information in using ERA, let's move on to the heart of our session, which is ERA and the 2013 Permanent Records Move. 2013 is a major transition year for using ERA for the annual move, which of course is also sometimes simply called the permanent move or the P-move, as in P-2012 or P-2013. This past year, we began asking a select group of agencies to use ERA to propose the transfer of eligible permanent records from federal record centers to NARA's permanent holdings. Instead of sending the 258s to agencies, we populated equivalent ERA transfer requests and asked those agencies to review the information, make any needed changes to the information regarding the transfers, and submit them to NARA. This year, we will be asking all agencies that have eligible permanent records at the FRCs to use ERA in 2013. For many, many agencies, this will be their first experience in using ERA. Not only does the annual move process seek to provide accurate intellectual control, it's also a complex logistical process, especially when large quantities of records and many agencies are involved. 2013 involves over 7,400 FRC transfers, around 75,000 cubic feet of records, 14 federal record centers, and nearly 20 archival units. ERA does, however, provide the opportunity for both agencies and NARA to improve processes and efficiency around the annual move, especially in the areas of transparency and consistency. ERA makes it possible to see and therefore to track the progress of each transfer request, both during the agency review process and the NARA approval process. Going forward, both your agency and NARA will have one place to look to know what has been proposed, approved, or legally transferred. ERA also provides an opportunity for greater consistency in legal transfer processes for agencies and for NARA across all regions, including the Washington, D.C. area. The TR provides a standard format for information about the records, whether they're stored in Fort Worth, Suitland, Boston, Seattle, Kansas City, or whether they were created in Texas, the District of Columbia, or Washington State. In the case of the annual move, all transfer requests are loaded into ERA at the same time. This requires a very high degree of collaboration and coordination across many NARA units. It also allows agencies to coordinate their own internal reviews and approval. One transfer request in ERA will be created for each eligible FRC transfer. So if your agency happens to have 115 eligible transfers in 2013, there will be 115 transfer requests in ERA for your agency. It's a one-to-one relationship for the annual move. This transparency and consistency will enhance the ability of each agency and of NARA to monitor and improve processes around this important activity. These are a few photographs from the National Archives at San Francisco of the U.S. Mint in the early 20th century, which I found rather entertaining around this subject. From left to right, we have the gold refining process, the storage of bars of gold, which are obviously of consistent size, shape, and quality. And on the far right, we see the mint staff rolling gold bullion into standard strips before stamping them into coins. Part of this process also produced in, again, the early 20th century, $10 gold eagles. Who's affected? All federal agencies that store permanent records in federal record centers. Not just, however, are federal agencies affected by the transition. All federal record centers across the country, all NARA archival units, both in the regions in D.C., NARA staff in the Office of the Chief Records Officer and the Office of Information Services, in addition to numerous other NARA staff, are currently at work preparing for this transition for 2013. What's affected? All legal transfers of records to NARA. Once more, a reminder, simply because ERA is the Electronic Records Archives does not mean that transfer of paper records or other non-electronic media are done outside of ERA. ERA will be used to transfer all records in all media. The SF-258 is no longer used. It's being replaced, of course, by ERA transfer requests for annual move and for agency direct offers of permanent records. Transfer requests are created in ERA for the annual move of permanent records, and data from the transfer request is derived from ARCIS data, as well as a certain amount of record schedule data. Existing SF-115's legacy schedules must be in ERA. Each transfer request must be linked to a valid legacy schedule, a valid 115 item, or a born in ERA disposition authority. Those legacy schedule items that will be needed for 2013 are already entered into ERA at this time, and the priority for entering additional record schedules goes to schedules that are needed in the immediate future, either for annual moves or for agency direct offers. Once more, for the annual move, one FRC transfer equals one ERA transfer request. The use of ERA has an impact on the timeline of the annual move process, both for agencies and for NARA. What stays the same, though? ARCUS is used to identify eligible transfers. Data about each FRC transfer is stored in the Federal Records Center operating system, ARCUS. This is true whether or not an individual agency uses an agency ARCUS portal or not. Even if your agency is still using optional Forms 11 to request records, even if you're using standard Forms 135 to transfer records to the Federal Records Centers, the data about those transactions are being captured in ARCUS. So the ARCUS data is where the information comes from. Another thing that stays the same, the review of eligible transfers by each agency. Agencies continue to be responsible for the accuracy and completeness of information in the ERA transfer request about permanent records offered to the National Archives, just as they were with the paper SF-258. The agency and NARA must both approve the legal transfer of the records. This remains the same as well. NARA will continue to pre-populate forms. Now we will use transfer requests in ERA rather than SF-258 for agency review and update for annual move processes. And the FRCs and the archival units at NARA will continue to coordinate the physical transfer of the records. Little information about some of the feedback we have gotten from our Pioneer and Power user agencies. Current users of ERA have led to some changes in NARA processes. One significant change was to provide a list of potentially eligible FRC transfers available earlier, much earlier. And in fact, all of those have already gone out to all of the agencies involved. This also has led us to provide this information in a spreadsheet format, so it's easier to manipulate. And the agencies will have now a 120-day window to do their internal reviews rather than 90 days. So here's the timeline that we're operating on for this year, for 2013 rather. On or about the 1st of August, I believe that all of you would have received, all of your agencies would have received these lists between the 1st and 3rd of August of this year. These lists have already gone out of potentially eligible transfers for January of 2013 for your agency. So you've already gotten those. On or around the 1st of October, NARA will load the transfer requests into ERA for the eligible transfers. We ask that you complete your work, your review, and your response in ERA by the 1st of December and submit the transfer request to NARA for approval by that date in order for the records to be moved during the January through March quarter. Again, this provides 120 days for your agency to review potentially eligible transfers. By the 15th of January, NARA should make an approval decision on the transfer requests that are proposed by the 1st of December. Either the TRs will be approved in ERA and require no further action on your part, at least to resubmit them or submit them to NARA, or NARA staff may be in touch with you to ask you questions about the transfer, or possibly may send it back to you, return the TR to you with a comment indicating why it's been returned to you. For transfers that were proposed by the agencies by the 1st of December, NARA approves them or disapproves them, in effect, by the 15th of January. NARA will move these approved records by the end of the January through March quarter. So our internal deadline for physically moving the records is the 31st of March in 2013 for those items that have actually been approved by both the agency and by NARA. So let's see what this looks like in ERA. This is the ERA homepage for records managers. Not only does it have a direct link into the ERA system itself, right here, it also has links to online training, boot camp information, annual move webinars, crosswalks, the agency user manual, and so on and so forth. Right now I'm going to give you a quick look at the online training. Online training for transferring records. In particular, Lessons 1, creating a transfer request, which has 3 different iterations, a straightforward tutorial, a demonstration, and guided practice. And Lesson 2, submitting a transfer request to NARA, has a tutorial, but is quite brief and really doesn't need anything much more complicated than that. Those 2 lessons are very, very important for your personal and agency training in how to create a transfer request. This is the online training that you really need to do. I'm just going to give you a quick look at it. This is essential for getting yourself started and your staff started in using ERA. This is the ERA portal itself. And I want to give you, again, a very quick look at the ERA production system. Again, these forms are called business objects in ERA. They're really just forms. The business object, the form that I want to show you very briefly, will be a sample of a real transfer request. So I'm going to select transfer request and use my keyword search for a transfer request in the live system. Here you can see the same transfer request, and ERA is displaying that particular form at different points in its the form's life cycle. This is when it was proposed to NARA by the agency. At this point, NARA approved the transfer of those records. And at this point, the transfer is in physical custody accepted status. You will note also that you can tell from the search results screen what the transaction number was. And in fact, what we're looking at here, of course, is the Federal Records Center, the FRC transfer number, also often called the accession number. We open this one up. This is the most current status. Physical custody of that group of records has indeed been accepted by NARA. We'll view that shortly. Again, this just gives you an idea of what it looks like. Most of the information, the detailed information, appears either in the General Information tab, for the Transfer Details tab, basic information about that particular group of records, contact information, and signatory information, indicating that this particular transfer request was automatically system generated for the 2012 annual move, who approved it, at what stage, and what its current status is. At this point, the Related Assets tab will also allow us to link back to the record schedule, the disposition authority, which determines that these are indeed permanent records. And here you can view what we call a legacy record schedule. You will note it has a DAL number. Disposition Authority Legacy is the way I tend to think of that. Here's the information about the overall schedule and item level information as well. That's just a sample of what an proposed approved transfer request looks like in ERA. Okay, so we've looked a little bit at the training very, very briefly, and we've looked at the production system, again, pretty briefly. So at this point, I want to talk a little bit about ERA support. What's available to agencies to help learn how to use ERA and get started with using ERA. We just looked at the ERA homepage for records, federal records managers at www.archives.gov, recordsmanagement/ERA. I've already showed you that that page has lots of information about ERA, ERA contacts. There are links to training. I encourage all new ERA users to be sure to make use of the ERA Agency Users Manual. I believe an updated version of that will be coming out in the next few weeks. The crosswalks for the 258 to the transfer request, the online training itself, of course, and in the DC area, in-person boot camps are available for those agency staff that would prefer to have an in-person overview and the actual opportunity to talk to NARA staff who use ERA on a regular basis. I believe that the next two boot camps in DC are scheduled for the 4th of October and the 23rd of October. The 4th of October class may already be full, but you can also sign up for those boot camps using the NARA Records Management Training page at nara.learn.com. Or, what's even easier, you can go back to the ERA Records Management homepage and use that link to click right in to where you can sign up for the boot camp training. Before you go to a boot camp, however, be very, very sure that you've done the online training, that you have your ERA user account, and that you have read and familiarized yourself with the ERA user manual before you attend the boot camp. It's much, much more useful for you if you've done your homework before you attend the boot camp. In addition to that, not just new users, but experienced users, do go back and check that page, the ERA either training page or the associated pages for updated information. As I just mentioned, there will be a new version, an updated version of the agency user manual for ERA coming out in the next couple of weeks. So, and two, if it's been a few months, a year since you've used ERA, you probably will find briefly taking the online training makes a great refresher for you. More specific information about using ERA for the annual move, detailed information. These webinars beginning next week on the 20th of September include a detailed look at each tab, in fact, virtually every field, on the transfer request. It includes information about fields on the transfer request which require special attention. Again, before you attend these webinars, be sure that you've taken the online training, have your ERA account, and you're familiar with the user manual. Then you'll have context in which to place the information that will be provided to you in these webinars. Again, you can get to this to the site to sign up for this from the ERA homepage. Like the online training and the boot camp, these particular annual move webinars are free, including the briefing you're getting today. Okay, here's some more context for you. Our ERA User Adoption Coordinator is Michael Carlson. Many of you probably have had numerous contacts with Mike over the last year or two about ERA adoption. If you have specific questions about using ERA for the annual move, you can contact me as well. You can talk to your appraisal archivist, especially if you are contemplating or planning to use ERA to schedule records. If you have a relationship with your accessioning archivist already, they should be able to help you out. And of course, the ERA help desk is very, very handy for all the wonderful kinds of things we need help desks for, especially setting up accounts, renewing passwords, helping with connectivity issues. So, once more, thanks for your help, thanks for your attendance, and let's see what kind of questions we still have outstanding.
Okay, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, Lynn. We would like to open this up now for any questions that people might have. If you've dialed in using your phone, you can press *6 and that will unmute you so that you can ask a question over the phone, or you can use the chat box at the lower left-hand corner.
Okay, we have a good question here. Thank you. Would ERA accounts be established if your organization has offered up names of those who should have them? Let me go back briefly. I'm hoping I can make the share work again. This is a primary ERA homepage for federal records managers. And I keep talking about this one. We've got the login information, the help desk information. We have numerous FAQs, information about getting started with ERA, and the questions that I think that we'll be able to answer when we go to getting started with ERA. The agency records officer needs to start by appointing an ERA account manager. And that is done when the agency records officer sends an email to erraaccounts@nara.gov. All right? That sets that person up as an account manager for that agency. Agencies need to determine who within their own agencies, what staff need what roles, and then those individuals need to take the training. Once the training is completed, there is an online an online user account request form, which I'm going to show you just for a second. Once your agency has an account manager and you have done your training, you use this online account to request an account, you must indicate who your account manager is, so you'll need to know that information, and you may submit this form online. An email will go to your agency's ERA account manager asking whether or not you, as the user, a new user, have permission to have an account and which roles. And all they have to do is confirm that, and the ERA Help Desk will set up an account for you with the appropriate roles and contact you with your user ID and login information. So this is the form, but we need to start by making sure that your agency has an account manager. And that account manager needs to be appointed by your agency records officer, and that information needs to be sent to eraaccounts@nara.gov. So what else have we got? Any more questions? A question from Robin. Is the ERA account manager usually the agency records officer, or does that vary from agency to agency? Actually, it does indeed vary from agency to agencies. Most of the agencies I'm familiar with so far, the account manager has been the agency records officer. Often, however, their agencies are so large that they may need to delegate that authority, and they may possibly, in few cases, have more than one account manager. That's unlikely, however. So it's the agency records officer's decision about who to appoint the account manager, and it varies from one to another. Impact shipments from Judy. Does this impact shipments to the FRC or just transfers to NARA? This does not impact shipments going to the Federal Record Centers. You will continue to use ARCUS if you have an ARCUS portal or the standard form 135 at this time to request permission and to transfer records for storage for Federal Record Centers.
Can you repeat that question again?
Okay, the question was, will this impact shipments to the FRC or just transfers to NARA? The short answer is it will only impact transfers, legal transfers of permanent records to the National Archives. It will not impact shipments of records for storage to the Federal Record Centers. Let's see, here's another question about how long do the user accounts stay active and how long before they expire. The current situation is that, I'm trying to do the math in my head, you need to renew your password every 90 days, no matter what. It's not 90 days since the last time you used it. It's every 90 days. And I believe if you do not use your account at all, in other words, you don't log in to ERA at all, for 6 months they suspend your account. I would have to double check on that time frame. If you have questions about that, actually, the ERA Help Desk, and you have that information, and I will show it to you again if necessary, can tell you whether or not your account is currently active. And if your password has expired, which has happened to me more than once, they are very happy and very, very helpful about getting your password reset for you. Good question. If the accounts become suspended, should we sign on periodically to keep it active? That's not a bad idea. You will still have to renew your password every 90 days. One of the things that's going to be coming up for most of you, I will make the assumption that most of you are listening in today because you are going to have records involved in the 2013 move. So you're probably going to need to be in there looking at that, keeping track of what's going on, monitoring the progression of the transfer requests within your agency as it moves through your process, whatever your process is, and then perhaps to keep an eye on what's happening with that transfer request after NARA has approved it and the records have been moved. So, or whether or not NARA has approved it. So once those records, those transfer requests go into ERA, periodically checking in to ERA and seeing what their status is probably a really good idea. Next question from Veronica. So overall, at this point in time, ERA is recommended for future record transfer. If a paper request has been implemented already and an accession number is on hold, do we wait for the accession number and input into ERA? First part of that question is, overall, ERA is recommended for all future record transfers. Anything initiated after the 30th of September, after the 30th of this month, must be done in ERA. And there are, as Veronica very wisely points out, a number of things that probably were initiated as paper 258s but have not yet gone through the complete cycle of submission, approval, and movement of records, and so on. It probably depends on why the accession number is on hold. If you know who you submitted that 258 to, or if you haven't submitted the 258 to the appropriate archival unit, then that's something you should discuss with the appropriate archival unit, and it may depend on the age of the 258, for instance. If it's a 5-year-old 258, based on information from 5 years ago, the archival unit may request that you reinitiate with a transfer request in ERA, or if it's a 258 that was only created a couple of months ago and you've already submitted it to the archival unit, you can get in touch with your archival unit and find out if they're about to assign it an accession number or what the issues are around that. So that is unfortunately one of those it depends questions. But if you had outstanding 258s, I would definitely get in touch with the archival unit to which those records would go. More questions, folks?
Okay, looks like we have hit the 2 o'clock hour. Thank you so much, Lynn. I really enjoyed your presentation and I learned a lot. All right, well, thank you everyone for your discussion and questions. Those were excellent questions. We will be hosting other upcoming online briefings, so please just look out for the flyers that will come out so that you can register for those. Also, please look for updates on the NARA Learn webpage. We do have some other courses, some other online content available. We have online classes. We have the Basic Records Operations course, as well as Vital Business Information, which is also known as VBI, available online, and the schedules for the fiscal year 2013 are up. You can also look at the class schedule for the face-to-face courses that we offer, and those are the knowledge area courses where you can get a certificate after you completed the test taking for knowledge areas 2 through 6. Okay? So I would like to thank all of those who came and attended. And I'd like to thank Lynn Stewart for her presentation today. As well, I'd like to thank Robin Wright for helping out with the producing of this online briefing. If you all have any questions or anything, we'll stay on the line for another minute or so. Otherwise, I hope that you have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
We hope you found this seminar useful. For more information about the U.S. National Archives and Records Administration and its National Records Management Training Program, please visit us online at archives.gov or view our current schedule of face-to-face and online workshops at nara.learn.com.